Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about the prophecy of the 77s. This is a prophecy that's found in the Bible in the book of Daniel. And why is it important? One of the reasons it's important is because it prophesies about when the Messiah is going to come and actually does it pretty accurately. The other reason it's important is because it tells us about what's going to happen at the time of the end. It's a prophecy about what specifically is going to happen during the tribulation period. So we can look at both these prophecies and see how amazing it is that in 530 BC somebody could predict all these things and do it quite accurately. Now before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the context that the prophecy occurred in, so that we'll just have a little better understanding of what's going on at the time of Daniel during this prophecy. As I said, the prophecy was given around 530 BC, and it was given in Babylon. It was during the Babylonian exiles. The Babylonians around 600 BC had destroyed Jerusalem and the temple in Jerusalem. This was the first temple, and sent the Jews into exile, where they would remain for roughly 70 years. And it was towards the end of this period where Daniel is giving this prophecy. The prophecy talks about different things like the rebuilding of the temple, the end of the exile, and then it talks about times in the more distant future, around the times of Christ, and it talks about actually farther distant in the future towards the end times. So this is the prophecy was given to Daniel by the angel Gabriel, who came to him one day while he was praying for the Jews. And now we're going to read the prophecy. Okay, now this is the prophecy of the 77s. It's from Daniel 9:24 through 27. You'll notice on here in parentheses I just have clarification points, just to clarify the prophecy. Alright, so we have 77s are decreed for your people the Jews and for your holy city, Jerusalem, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up or fulfill the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So you can see here in the first prophecy he's talking about a time when there's no more sin, that no more transgressions, that wickedness has been atoned for by someone's sacrifice, and everlasting righteousness is brought in. And also that the most holy is anointed. Now when we're talking about anointed, we're talking about what the Jews expected to come was a Messiah, someone who would save them, and this person would be king. And that's what it's referring to when it's talking about anointing. The kings were anointed, and that this person would be most holy. So it says, no one understand this, from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem to the anointed one, the ruler comes, or the Messiah. There will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens, 69 sevens total. So between the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, there would be 69 sevens, and then the Messiah would come. Jerusalem would be rebuilt with streets in a trench, but in times of trouble. That would be the first 7 sevens. After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be cut off and will have nothing, or he will die. So this prophecy is predicting the death of the king, the anointed one, the Messiah. He will be cut off after a total of 69 sevens from that decree. This is the second part of the prophecy. The people of the ruler who will come. Right now we're talking about somebody else. We're talking about the Antichrist. The people of the ruler who will come. Right, the people was the Romans because they destroyed the city and the sanctuary in 70 AD. So the people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. All right, so that happened in 70 AD. The people, so we know the people were the Romans, and that the people of the ruler who will come is a Roman. In other words, the ruler that will come is a Roman. War will continue to the time of the end, and desolations have been decreed. He, the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. That's the last 7. So the 70th 7 it will begin when the Antichrist confirms a covenant with many. In the middle of the 7, in other words, after 3.5 years, he will put an end to the temple sacrifice and offering. And on a wing of the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him, or he is destroyed. So in this part of the prophecy, we're seeing an end time, 7 years, in the middle of which, well, at the beginning of which, there will be a covenant confirmed. In the middle of that period, the Antichrist will set up the abomination of desolation, and at the end, the Antichrist will be destroyed. So just to reiterate again what we're talking about here, the things that this prophecy foretells. At the end of the prophecy, there will be an end to sin, an atonement for sin. Christ will be anointed as king. Jerusalem and the temple will be rebuilt during the first 7. The Messiah will come after 69 sevens. The Messiah will die. Unbelievably, in this prophecy. The Romans will again destroy Jerusalem and the temple. That was in 70 AD. War and desolations will continue to the end. Now, during the final 7-year period, the Antichrist will confirm the covenant with the Jews at the beginning of the last 7. He will put an end to sacrifice, set up the abomination of desolation in the middle of the last 7, and will be destroyed at the end of the prophecy. Now here is the prophecy in graphic form. Here we have in the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, 49 years when Jerusalem is rebuilt to 396 BC, and then that goes for another 483 years. Now let's see if this takes us to the Messiah. It says after 69 sevens of years, the Messiah will come. All right. Now, when was the decree to rebuild Jerusalem? The decree actually occurred in 445 BC when a guy named Artaxerxes gave Nehemiah papers that said he was to go and rebuild Jerusalem. And you can read about this in Nehemiah 2, where Nehemiah is given this decree. We know that this decree occurred around 445 BC. All right, now the number of days prophesied to be between Artaxerxes' decree to rebuild Jerusalem and the coming Messiah equals 69 times 7 years, or 483 Jewish years. Now there's a couple of assumptions we're going to make here, and the first of all is the Jewish year is 360 days long, and the reason for that is because it's based on the lunar cycle. Okay, it's not based on the sun. So there's 360 days in their year and 30 days in each one of their months. So we're going to be using that for the purposes of this prophecy. So if you multiply 69 times 7, you get the 483 years. And you multiply that times 360 days, you get 173,880 days prophesied. The actual decree was probably on the 1st of Nisan, or March 14th of 445 BC. Jesus began his ministry according to Luke 3 in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, which would have been 29 AD. His ministry continued for 3 years to AD 32. Jesus probably made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem on Sunday, April 6th of AD 32, since the Passover of 32 AD was on April 10th, and the Sunday before this was the day of his triumphal entry, which would have been April 6th of AD 32. So what we're saying is, after we convert our Julian calendar to the Jewish calendar, we should find the same number of days, or 173,880 days, between 445 BC and AD 32, April 6th, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem as king on a donkey. This is known in Christianity as Palm Sunday. All right, there should be 103,880 days between March 14th, 445 BC, and April 6th of 32 AD. Now, this is how we figure this out. Between these dates, there are 477 Julian years and 24 days. There's only 1 year between 1 BC and 1 AD, which equals 173,764 days. If you add 119 days for the Julian leap years, you get 173,883 days. Okay, so that's 3 more days than we're looking for. 3 days must then be subtracted to account for another 1/128th inaccuracy in the Julian solar year. 1 day is lost every 128 years. In this scenario, you can see that the Daniel prophecy was accurate to the exact day. 173,880 days after the prophecy was made, Jesus made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. So this is unbelievable, really, that you can figure this out like this. Or you might say, well, gee, it took a number of complicated assumptions in order to get there. One thing you have to remember is that the Jews weren't living in the Julian calendar. They were living in the Jewish calendar. It would have been much more simple for the Jews just to multiply out the 360 days, count the number of days, and it would have taken them right to Palm Sunday, AD 32, when Jesus made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. So unbelievably, against all odds, Daniel's prophecy turns out to be correct. Now we're going to look at the last part of the prophecy. And one of the things you're going to notice here is that there's a gap here. Where's the gap? There's a gap between the Messiah being cut off, the triumphal entry, and then Jesus dying a few days later, and the final beginning of the final 7 years, where there's a confirmation of the covenant by the Antichrist. There's been like over 2,000 years in this gap. Well, why is this gap here? The way it can best be explained is that the prophecy is specifically about what is going to happen to the Jews prophetically, and the Jews are not included in this prophetic gap here between the Messiah being cut off and the confirmation of the covenant. So even though the Jews are around, they're not part of this prophecy. One way I've heard it explained is saying that when you have like a football game, there's a certain number of minutes, 20 minutes per period, and that there's times that aren't included in the periods, like halftime and 2-minute warning where they take a break, and timeouts where they take a break, and commercials where they take a break. Those are like pauses or whatever, but they're not actually part of the game. Well, this is a long pause here in the middle of the game, and this is the game itself right here. So the final 7 doesn't start until according to the prophecy, until the confirmation of the covenant, which is right here. Now, we're going to look at the same diagram. It's just going to have the first part of it cut off. This is the final 7 years here, confirmation of the covenant. This is the church age. Now, what happens in the church age is there's the rapture of the church. And also we can see that in order for the final 7 years to take place, a few things have to happen. First, the Jews have to be back in Israel, or the final 7 years can't take place, because they can't make a confirmation of the covenant, and they can't rebuild the temple, which we'll see has to be there. So we've seen now that in 1949, Israel was restored, the nation of Israel. In 1967, they reclaimed the Temple Mount. So at some point, there will be this confirmation of the covenant, and the final 7-year period will start. Now, there's always the question of what is the covenant, because people that aren't Jews don't understand what the covenant is. This is the covenant. It's called the Abrahamic covenant. Now the Lord said to Abraham, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation." He's going to make him a great nation in the land. "I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those that bless you and curse those who curse you. In you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." It's basically talking about everyone being blessed through the Jews, through the Messiah. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, "To your offspring I give this land from the river Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates." So the covenant is not only defines God relationships to the Israelites, but promises them land as part of the covenant, and that's the land of Israel. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the confirmation of the covenant. The Antichrist will confirm a covenant that the Jews have a right to the land. In other words, the Antichrist will say, yes, it's true, God has given the Jews the land of Israel. That's the confirmation of the covenant. Midway through that period, the abomination of desolation will be set up according to the prophecy. Now, the abomination of desolation can't be set up unless there's a temple, because that's where the abomination is set up, in the temple. From the time the abomination is set up, there will be a 3.5-year period until Jesus comes back. The Antichrist is destroyed. I just want to look at a couple of other prophecies that show us time periods. This is in Revelation 13:5-8. "And there was given unto him," we're talking about the Antichrist again, "a mouth to speak in great things and blasphemies, and power was given him to continue 42 months. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose name was not written in the book of life." So this is giving us time here. It's telling us that there's 42 months between this period where the Antichrist is given a mouth to speak boastfully. He sets up the abomination of desolation. 42 months until the end. Okay, and as I said, those 42 months are 30-day months, so that will be 1,290 days. So this period between the confirmation of the covenant and the abomination is 1,260 days, And it's the same period between the abomination until Jesus Christ returns. So you can see, if you get to this period where you see the confirmation of the covenant happening in Israel, from that day on, you'll know exactly when Christ will return. 7 years later, exactly 2 times 1,260 days, which would be 20, 25, 20 days. If my math is correct. There's another prophecy. This is a little farther on in Daniel. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. And it says at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, and others to shame and everlasting contempt. So, this is what he's saying. From the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, so we know that to be the mid-tribulation period, from that time there will be 1,290 days until everyone whose name is found written in the book of life will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life and others to shame and contempt. So what Daniel's saying a little bit farther on is he's giving times. He's saying from this period to 30 days. He said 1,290 days. 30 days past the return of Christ will be a judgment. Okay, there will be deliverance and judgment of the Jews, and there will be a resurrection, and some will be resurrected to life, and others will be resurrected to death. That's 1,290 days from this period. And then it says in another part, it says, blessed is he who is faithful out another 45 days. So I'm saying that's probably when Christ will be coronated, when we'll see the end of the total destruction of all that went before Christ as king, and the millennium, or the 1,000-year reign of Christ, which it talks about in Revelation, begins. So that's pretty much how you can interpret the prophecy of the 77s in Daniel. It's pretty straightforward. Once you know a couple of keys, you can do it. Now, when Daniel got this prophecy, he said to the angel afterwards, he says, I don't understand any of this. I don't understand what you're telling me. Explain it to me. And the angel Gabriel said to Daniel, just go your way, and the prophecies are sealed up until the time of the end. In other words, these prophecies won't be understood until the time of the end. And then at the time of the end, God will give certain people the wisdom to be able to understand them so that they can be explained. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing people are being given wisdom to explain what these prophecies mean in detail. And that is the evidence that we are living in the end times, or that is evidence that we're living in the end times, that these things are about to be fulfilled, is because you can find people now who can explain these prophecies in detail. So thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something from this, and I hope it leads you to prepare your life for the eventuality of these things happening in the near future, because I think that God, by this prophecy, when he gave Daniel this prophecy, wanted us to know, in other words, the people who are living in the end times, to be able to understand what was going on as it happened, so that we wouldn't be confused, and that we could anticipate the final coming of Christ and the coming of his millennial and eternal kingdom.